It was in 1960, so a long time ago. And the U-2 was an American spy plane, which was flying on this occasion from a base in Pakistan to another base in Norway. And it was shot down over the Ural Mountains near a town called Sverdlovsk by the Soviets. And the pilot was saved. He parachuted down, a guy called Gary Powers, that was his name. And the plane itself crashed, but a lot of it survived. And the Russians decided to put the remnants of the plane, the wreckage of the plane, on display for a public exhibition. And they did this in Gorky Park, which is, one of the main parks in Moscow. And so the plane was on display, and we in the embassy, in the American embassy, wanted very much to see what was left of it. It was a pretty big thing. But there was a feeling that it wouldn't be a good idea if our military attachés went to see the plane, because it might provoke an incident. The Russians might want to sort of provoke some kind of an incident with them. So there was a decision that I would go and look at the plane. So I went along to Gorky Park, and when I got there, I remember it was a sunny day, and there was a huge crowd, a huge line of people waiting to get into this building where the plane was on exhibit. And one of the things in Russia in those days was that if you were in the diplomatic corps, you had a diplomatic identity card, an ID. And if you showed that diplomatic ID, you could go to the head of any line at all in town. And so I knew I could do that. I could go up to the head of the line, show my card. But that's when I began to wonder what would happen. They had this plane, they'd shot it down, they weren't pleased about this. And I thought, I wonder what sort of reception I'm going to get. Anyway, I finally went up and took out my ID and showed it to this Soviet security guy, a cop, who was controlling the entrance to the exhibit. And he played it pretty well. He looked at the card, carefully, the way they do, in his hand. And then he looked at me, gave me a, kind of the old stone eye. And then he looked at the card again. And then he said, so you're an American, huh? And the tone was, I thought, this is going to be trouble, So I said, yeah, I'm from the American Embassy. You're from the American Embassy, huh? Yeah. And so he looked at the card again, and then he said, all right, he said, okay, it's your plane. Go on and look at it. So he was pretty good, I think, the guy. And I was glad to get in. And so it was extremely interesting. There was a lot of the plane left. And the various things that this guy, Francis Gary Powers, had in the plane. One of the things he had in the plane was a pistol. That was the only armament on the plane. It didn't have any bombs. Mm-hmm. And that led actually to a conversation I had with an ordinary Russian who was also at the exhibit, because he said, that was pretty bad sending a plane like that over. He said, what kind of a plane was it? So I said, well, it was to take photographs, really. He said, did it have any bombs on it? And I said, no, it doesn't have any bombs. The only thing the guy had was a pistol in case he ran into any trouble. And so the guy said, oh, well, if no bombs on it, wasn't so bad then, was it? And that gave you a kind of a look at what the ordinary Russian was thinking about the